After my son died suddenly, his wife banned me from the funeral, unaware he'd hidden cameras in the house. They captured his final words and her chilling confession. I played the footage anyway. What happened next? No one saw it coming. I never thought grief could feel so loud. Not the kind that comes from losing someone over time, but the kind that hits without warning. It was a Thursday night when the phone rang. I remember the time exactly, 11:46 p.m. I was already in bed, half asleep, when I picked it up. The voice on the other end was shaking, and before I could even ask what was wrong, I heard the words, "David, your son, he's gone." Gone. That word knocked the wind out of me. They said it was a stroke. Sudden. Peaceful. No pain. But that didn't make sense. David had just turned 39. He was healthy, too healthy. Went on morning jogs. Took vitamins. Didn't drink or smoke. No history of heart issues in the family. I didn't even cry at first. I just sat there, holding the phone like it was part of a dream I couldn't wake up from. The funeral was 2 days later. It felt like the world moved without me. Everyone around me was whispering, crying, patting my back like I was some fragile porcelain doll. But then something happened that shifted the weight of my sadness into something else, something colder. Brianna leaned in close, her face full of fake pity, and whispered in my ear, "You'll be gone by Friday." I didn't respond. I just turned my head slightly and looked at her. This woman I had never fully trusted, though I kept that to myself when David was alive. She was still dressed in all black, her makeup perfect, not a hair out of place. But her eyes? Her eyes weren't mourning. They were calculating. That moment at the funeral was the first warning, but it wasn't the last. My name wasn't even listed in the program. They had me sitting in the 4th row, like some distant relative instead of the mother of the man they were burying. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to make a scene, not then. But inside I was boiling. I had lived in that house for 11 years. David and I bought it together when he lost his job during the tech downturn and needed a stable place to land. I gave him $80,000, my retirement savings. We agreed it would be our home. When he met Brianna, I welcomed her with open arms, even when I sensed she was too smooth, too shiny, too rehearsed. After the funeral, when we got back home, it was like she couldn't wait to start erasing him. First, the photos came down. The ones in the hallway, the framed one in the living room of David fishing with his dad gone. Then his clothes disappeared. She told guests she was donating them to charity. I found his jackets in a trash bag by the garage. Then my things started vanishing. My room? Locked. My clothes? Packed in boxes I never touched. The next morning, I woke up and found my name removed from our joint bank account. I couldn't even buy groceries without begging. Still, I didn't confront her. I started paying attention instead. She thought I was just an old lady lost in grief, but she didn't know me. I was a school principal for 27 years. I knew how to read people, how to sit in silence and let the truth show itself. I went to the basement one night when she was asleep. The storage bins were dusty and untouched. But I knew what I was looking for. Inside a locked plastic file box, I found what I needed. Our co-ownership deed, showing my name. Bank records. Copies of the cashier's check I gave David. I ran my fingers over the papers, heart racing, as if they might disappear if I blinked. But something still didn't sit right. This wasn't just about money. There was something darker behind her urgency. Why was she trying to erase David so fast? Then one morning, over a very staged breakfast, she dropped a bomb. "I'm pregnant." I looked at her, pretending to be surprised. She touched her stomach like she'd just felt a flutter. But my mind was already doing the math. David had been gone for over 10 weeks. Her story didn't line up. That's when I called Mr. Ron Ellis, David's lawyer. He'd handled some of our old family documents before. He was kind, sharp, and had a memory like steel. I told him everything. Every strange detail. The bank access. The pregnancy claim. The funeral program. The whisper. He didn't dismiss a word. "Margaret," he said, "something isn't right here." I trusted my gut, and his. He suggested something I hadn't even thought of. "Do you want to run a toxicology report?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. Meanwhile, I started watching Brianna closely. She was always on her phone, talking low in the hallway, laughing sometimes when she thought I was asleep. I installed a simple app on David's old tablet, just a motion-activated camera. I left it facing the front hallway when I went to visit an old friend across town. When I came back and checked the footage, I nearly dropped the tablet. A man had entered the house. Not a delivery guy. Not family. A stranger in a designer jacket. He walked in like he belonged. Head down. sunglasses on. He wasn't a guest. I showed the footage to Ron. That's not just a visitor, he said. That's her boyfriend. A week later, the toxicology report came back. Trace amounts of digitalis, plant-based poison. Hard to detect. Easy to slip into food. 1 dose at a time. I felt my blood go cold. Everything snapped into place. The fake pregnancy. The rush to erase David. The secrecy. The bank lockouts. It wasn't just betrayal. It was murder. Ron and I kept digging. He pulled email records, looked at electronic signatures. We found a will, dated after David's death, with a signature that didn't match. Brianna had forged it, naming herself sole heir. But the metadata? It showed the document had been created on her laptop, not his. We had everything, but I didn't act yet. I waited, because revenge, when done right, takes patience, and she had no idea the storm was coming. I kept moving through that house like a ghost. Every room held pieces of David. His work desk still smelled like his cologne, the hallway still echoed with the sound of his footsteps. But Brianna had made it her mission to erase all of that. I watched in silence as she redecorated the living room, replaced the couch, and even boxed up his favorite mug, the one that said code coffee repeat. She didn't know I was watching every little move, cataloging it all in my mind. Every time she threw something out, I remembered. Every time she lied with a sweet smile, I noted the details. I didn't want revenge for the sake of vengeance. I wanted the truth. I wanted justice for my son. A week after I spoke to Ron, he called me again. His voice was calm but serious. "Margaret, I need you to see something." I drove to his office in uptown Charlotte, and he had a folder waiting on the desk. Inside were email threads, ones I never expected to see. Brianna had been messaging someone named Trevor Miles, and the tone wasn't innocent. They weren't just friends. These emails were emotional, intimate, and incriminating. In one message, she told him, "It's almost done. Just a few more dinners, and he won't be a problem anymore." Another read, "This house is worth nearly $600,000, and once the paperwork clears, it's ours. I just need to keep Margaret quiet until then." My hands were shaking when I closed the folder. Ron looked at me, his eyes steady. "She's been planning this longer than we thought." I remember whispering, he trusted her. And Ron just nodded, because what could he say? David had loved her. I didn't want to believe it either, but the proof was in front of us. Later that night, I pretended to be asleep when Brianna came home. I heard her humming in the kitchen, like everything was normal. But I knew she had poison in her smile. I knew the same hands that used to toast wine with David were the ones that had stirred something into his dinner night after night. She thought I was blind. But I had already started copying everything, documents, recordings, photos. Every lie she thought she'd buried, I was digging up. The next morning, she tried a new trick. She placed an envelope under my door, no name on it, just typed words. "Please vacate the premises within 48 hours. Her fake signature at the bottom. She wasn't even subtle anymore. I showed it to Ron. He laughed under his breath and said, "This is not a legal eviction. This is a joke." We added it to the evidence file. Every time she tried to intimidate me, she only strengthened my case. Then came the next surprise. Brianna hosted what she called a healing gathering. She invited David's co-workers, some neighbors, and even a few of her Instagram followers. She made it look like a morning event, but it felt more like a networking party. She wore a fitted white dress, nothing like a widow, and walked around with a glass of wine, hugging people like she was running for office. I stayed in the background, standing by the window, saying little. But people noticed me. One of David's co-workers, a man named Kevin, came over and quietly said, "He talked about you all the time. Said you were his anchor." I nodded, holding back tears. I asked if he knew much about Brianna's relationship with David toward the end, and he hesitated. They argued a lot. He seemed stressed. More than usual. Then he looked around, lowered his voice. I don't want to be rude, but something about her never felt real. I knew what he meant. Later that evening, I caught Brianna whispering near the hallway with a tall man in a dark coat. He didn't introduce himself. Didn't even make eye contact with anyone. I recognized him from the footage, Trevor. She was bringing him into David's house while pretending to grieve. I wanted to scream, but I stayed quiet, because soon it would all come out. That night, I waited until she was asleep and checked her tote bag. She always carried it around, even into the bathroom. Inside, I found another folder. It was labeled backup plan. I didn't steal it. I just photographed every page. One document was a fake will, with a digital signature dated 4 days after David died. Another was a timeline of events, when she planned to file claims, call the insurance company, and start probate. She even had notes about contacting a real estate agent. She had it all planned, but she didn't know I had something even stronger. A letter. I'd found it tucked in the drawer of David's desk, sealed in an old white envelope. It was dated 3 weeks before he died. He hadn't signed it, but the handwriting was his. It read, "If anything happens to me, look into it. I don't trust her anymore. Protect yourself, Mom." I stared at that letter for a long time. I read it 3 times before I cried, because somewhere deep down he had known. Maybe not everything, but enough to know he was in danger. I forwarded all my photos to Ron. He called me the next morning. "Margaret," he said, "we have more than enough to move forward. The ultrasound date, the emails, the letter, the footage, the toxicology, it's airtight. And if we prove she used the poisoned food intentionally, this won't just be fraud. It's attempted murder." That word made my stomach turn. I knew it was true, but saying it out loud made it real. A few days later, Brianna tried one more act. She sat across from me at the dining table and put on a trembling voice. "I'm just trying to honor David," she said. "This house was supposed to be ours. We wanted a family." Then she placed a sonogram photo on the table. I picked it up, flipped it over. The date printed on the back was recent, too recent. "You're 12 weeks along?" I asked. She nodded, brushing a fake tear away. "But David's been gone for nearly 11, I replied. She froze for a half second, then forced a smile. "Oh, I must have gotten the dates wrong." I said nothing, but my silence must have unnerved her because she got up quickly and left the room. That evening, I sent Ron the photo. His reply was fast. "This helps. If she's using a false pregnancy claim to secure financial control or sympathy, that's additional fraud. If she lied on any insurance claims or filed anything official under false pretense, we can move this into criminal court." We were almost ready. I had copies of everything stored in 3 places. One in my bank deposit box, one with Ron, and one hidden inside a vent in the guest room. I wasn't taking chances. Then came the knock on the door. A man in a dark suit stood there with a plain envelope. "For Ms. Lane," he said. Inside was the court notice. Brianna was being served. Probate fraud, forgery, and pending investigation into David's death. The look on her face when she opened it. I'll never forget it. She wasn't the widow anymore. She was the suspect. She didn't speak to me for the rest of that night. Not a word. Not even a glare. Just silence. The kind that thickens in a house and makes the air feel heavy. I knew what she was doing, trying to figure out how much I knew, how far I was willing to go. But what she didn't know was that I had already gone farther than she could imagine. The truth was out. The law was moving. And every lie she'd built was now crumbling under the weight of her own arrogance. That morning, I woke up early and made coffee like I always did. She was already in the kitchen, dressed in black again, like she was still auditioning for sympathy. Her hair was too perfect, and her eyes, though tired, still carried that sharp glint of calculation. She glanced at me but didn't say good morning. Instead, she said, "You're really doing this?" I didn't look up from my cup. "Doing what?" She slammed her mug down harder than she needed to. "You know exactly what. I know that the truth has a way of catching up to people," I said, my voice calm. Her lips curled into a tight smile. "You've always hated me. From the beginning. Admit it." "I never hated you," I said honestly. "I just saw through you." "That's not the same thing." She stood there for a second like she wanted to scream but didn't. Instead, she grabbed her phone and walked out onto the porch, talking fast into the receiver. I didn't have to strain to hear her words. "Bluffing," she said. "There's no way she has proof of everything. She's just an old woman trying to hold on to what isn't hers." I sipped my coffee and smiled because that's where she was wrong. Everything she tried to erase had already been backed up, printed, stamped, and ready to be handed to the court. Later that day, Ron called. His voice was serious but steady. "We filed a motion to freeze any sale or transfer of the property. Until the investigation is complete, she can't touch it." I let out a long breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Also," he added, "we've sent requests for her digital records, email logs, account transactions, communication with Trevor. If there's more, we'll find it." "Thank you," I said. "I don't know how I'd be handling any of this without you." "You're handling it just fine," he replied. "You've done everything right. Now it's her move, and from what I've seen, she's out of good ones." The next few days were tense. Brianna avoided me most of the time, but she didn't stop her little performances. One afternoon, I walked in from the garden and found her pacing the living room, holding a phone to her ear and saying through forced tears, "I just don't know how to handle this stress. I'm trying to carry a child and deal with legal threats. It's so much." I didn't interrupt. I didn't even acknowledge her. I just went to the kitchen and washed the dirt from my hands while she continued pretending to be the victim in a story she had written. That night, she left her laptop open on the dining table. Normally, she was paranoid, never left anything unlocked. But maybe she was slipping, or maybe she wanted me to see what was on the screen. Either way, I took a quick glance. She had been searching things like how to contest a will and what if a co-owner refuses to leave. She was losing control and she knew it. The next morning, she tried kindness again. "I've been thinking," she said as she poured herself tea. "We should try to move forward. Maybe talk things through. For David's sake." I raised an eyebrow. "You want to talk now? I just don't think dragging this through court is healthy for either of us. And the baby." She trailed off and looked down at her belly like it held the answer to all her problems. I let the silence stretch before I replied, "Then maybe you shouldn't have forged documents. Or tried to kick me out of the house I helped pay for." Her voice sharpened. "I told you David and I talked about that will." "No," I said, standing up and meeting her gaze. "You talked to yourself and typed up what you wanted." Her eyes flickered. "You think you're going to win?" "I don't think," I said. "I know." She left the room with clenched fists. Later that day, I got a text from Ron. The toxicology findings had been submitted to the prosecutor's office. A detective from the Charlotte PD would be reviewing the case personally. It was no longer just a civil dispute. It was a potential criminal investigation, one that could lead to real charges. And then, something happened I didn't expect. Kevin, David's old co-worker, stopped by with a thumb drive. "I found this cleaning out his desk at work," he said. "He asked me to hold on to it a while back. Said it was for his mom, just in case something happened." My hands shook as I took it. I thanked him, shut the door, and plugged it into David's old laptop in the study. There was only one file, a voice recording. It was David. His voice filled the room. He sounded tired, worn down. "If you're hearing this, Mom, then I guess I didn't make it. I've been suspicious for a while. Brianna's been different, secretive. I think she's seeing someone else. I've been feeling sick after meals, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm being paranoid or poisoned." He took a shaky breath. "I haven't told anyone but Kevin. I just needed someone to know. If anything happens, please don't let her take everything." I sat there for a long time after it ended, listening to the silence, feeling the weight of my son's voice in the room again. He had tried to warn me. He hadn't been blind. He just didn't act fast enough. I sent the recording to Ron immediately. He called me 10 minutes later. "This is it, Margaret. Between this, the poison report, the digital evidence, and the false will, we've got enough to bury her in court. And if the DA agrees, in prison too." That evening, there was another knock on the door. A plain-clothed detective introduced himself and handed Brianna a formal notice. She was officially under investigation. Her face went pale. She tried to close the door in his face, but it was too late. I watched from the hallway as her whole world cracked open. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear. I felt strength. Not because I had won, but because I had finally stopped being silent. The days after the court notice were strange. Not quiet, but staged, like Brianna was suddenly playing a part in a show only she believed in. She floated around the house like nothing had happened. She still played the grieving widow in front of the neighbors, posting soft-filtered photos of David's favorite flowers and captions like, "Gone too soon, always in my heart." But I knew better. Behind that screen, she was scrambling. She avoided looking me in the eye most of the time. When she did speak, her voice was sweet in that sugar-coated way that always made my stomach twist. One morning, she knocked gently on my bedroom door and said through the wood, "If you want to talk, I'm here. I think we've both just been under a lot of stress." I didn't answer, because by then, I knew what she was doing. She wasn't trying to reconcile. She was testing the waters, trying to see what I knew and how much I was willing to expose. Ron and I were already steps ahead. He had filed the property injunction, and a formal motion was underway to begin a full legal audit of the house, the forged will, and Brianna's false claims. He warned me not to engage with her emotionally. "She's going to try every angle now," he said. "Be patient. Keep gathering. Stay calm." So I did. The cameras I'd quietly set up continued doing their job. I moved one near the hallway and another near the kitchen entry, disguised behind old picture frames and dusty books. I wasn't paranoid, I was careful. And sure enough, I caught what I expected. Brianna was still seeing him. Trevor. One afternoon while I was out visiting a friend, I left the cameras running and returned quietly through the back gate. From the window, I saw her let him in. No hugs. No kisses. Just sharp whispers and fast hand gestures. They argued in hushed tones, and then he handed her a folder. She opened it, flipped through the pages quickly, and nodded. He left within 10 minutes. When I checked the footage later, I zoomed in as much as I could. Inside the folder were printed screenshots, bank statements, maybe, and what looked like identity forms. I sent the stills to Ron. He called the same night. He's preparing her to move assets, he said. It's not just about the house anymore. She's probably trying to hide money, maybe cash out crypto accounts or liquidate anything she thinks won't be frozen. I asked him, "Can we stop her?" "We're working on it," he said. "But the moment she transfers anything big, the audit will catch it." That same night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into David's old office, the one she had mostly ignored, maybe because it still smelled like him, or maybe because it reminded her of what she did. I turned on the lamp, sat at his desk, and opened the bottom drawer. That's when I found another envelope, unlabeled, just wedged behind some old tax papers. Inside was a USB drive. I stared at it for a long time before plugging it into his laptop. It contained one folder. For Mom. My hands trembled slightly as I clicked it open. It was an audio file. David's voice. "Hey Mom, if you're hearing this, something probably happened to me. I've been getting sick after meals, and I don't think it's just stress. I don't want to think Brianna would ever hurt me, but lately, I don't know. She's cold, distant. I found some texts on her iPad with someone named Trevor. She deleted them quickly, but I saw enough. I just need you to be safe. If anything happens, make sure you check the house records. Keep what's yours." He paused, then added softly, "And know that I love you." I covered my mouth with my hand as the tears came. Quietly. Slowly. I didn't want to wake her. That recording wasn't just a message. It was his last act of protection. I sent it to Ron the next morning. "This confirms everything," he said. "Between this and the poison report, the authorities won't be able to ignore it." Things moved quickly after that. The district attorney's office requested access to all financial and medical records. A fraud investigation began, and Trevor's name popped up on more than one flagged transaction. Turns out, he had opened multiple accounts under aliases and had been draining funds from Brianna's crypto wallets for weeks. The best part? She didn't even know he was using her. She was too busy trying to orchestrate her perfect escape to see she was being played too. But even with all that, she still tried to manipulate the story. I came home one afternoon and found her on a video call in the dining room. She didn't hear me walk in. She was saying, "She's unstable. Honestly, I think she's making everything up because she's jealous. She wanted control over David, and now that he's gone, she can't handle losing power." I cleared my throat. She jumped. Muted the call. Tried to act surprised. "Oh, I didn't hear you come in." I smiled just enough to let her know I'd heard everything. "You really should be more careful what you say in this house." She blinked, trying to come up with a response, but I walked right past her, leaving her words to wither in the air. Ron had told me something that stuck with me. People like her? They don't stop until they lose everything. But the worst thing you can do is give them a reaction. So I didn't. I made tea. I watered the plants. I cleaned the picture frames she hadn't touched. And all the while, I documented everything. By the end of that week, the house felt like a battlefield just before the final clash. She started pacing more, snapping at minor things. The fridge door. The mail. The sound of the washing machine. The tension was getting to her, and she knew time was slipping away. That Friday, a manila envelope slid under my bedroom door. I opened it to find another eviction notice, clearly fake. No court stamp. No lawyer signature. Just a printed threat, claiming I had 48 hours to vacate due to emotional disturbance and interference with grieving process. At the bottom was the kicker. Failure to vacate may result in legal consequences, including elder abuse claims. I sat on my bed holding the paper, letting the weight of it settle, not in fear but in awe. She had really gone there, trying to flip the story, paint me as the dangerous one, the unstable one, after everything she'd done. But this wasn't her story anymore. I placed the paper in my evidence folder, scanned it to Ron, and sent one line with it. She just crossed the line. He called me 20 minutes later. "That's it. This is going straight to the judge. She's committing fraud openly now." I asked, "What happens next?" His voice didn't waver. "We file. and she answers to the law. And in that moment, I didn't feel afraid anymore. I felt ready. The day we filed the full complaint was the day the house changed. Not physically. It still looked the same, with David's books still on the shelf and my old tea kettle still on the stove. But the air felt different. Sharper. Tighter. Like the house itself knew what was coming. Ron submitted everything. The audio file, the toxicology report, the letter, the footage, the false eviction threat. The judge reviewed it all and granted a fast-tracked injunction. The house was now legally protected from any sale, transfer, or forced removal. And Brianna? She was officially under investigation for probate fraud, document forgery, and obstruction. She didn't take it well. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table sipping my tea when she came in wearing sunglasses inside the house. Her eyes were puffy, her mouth tight. I looked up, but she didn't say a word. Just moved around the kitchen like a robot, opening drawers, slamming cabinets, pretending she wasn't falling apart. I waited for her to say something. An apology. A threat. Anything. But she didn't. Maybe she was finally realizing this wasn't a bluff. This wasn't some power struggle she could win by acting sweeter or meaner. The law was real. The evidence was real. And her time was running out. That afternoon, I heard her pacing upstairs. Heavy steps back and forth. Then came the sound of boxes being moved. She was packing. Not leaving, not yet, but preparing. And then something strange happened. She started cleaning. Not just tidying up, but deep cleaning. Scrubbing bathroom tiles. Wiping down baseboards. As if trying to make the house hers again. Trying to erase the tension with bleach. I stood in the hallway and watched her quietly as she wiped the windows in the living room, her movements frantic. "You don't have to do that," I said. She jumped, then turned and forced a smile. "I just thought I'd help out." I tilted my head slightly. "Funny. You've never cleaned those windows in 3 years." Her jaw clenched. "Maybe I'm trying to turn over a new leaf." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She knew the truth had already been written. And now, she was trying to rewrite it with soap and denial. Later that night, she tried a new tactic. She came to my door around 10 p.m., gently knocked, and waited. I opened it partway. She stood there, barefoot, wearing David's old hoodie. That alone made my stomach turn. "I just want to talk," she said softly. I didn't speak. Just waited. "I know you think I'm some monster," she continued. "But I loved him. I did. I just didn't know how to handle everything. The stress. The pressure. The fights." "Fights?" I asked. "He never said you were fighting." "Well, of course he wouldn't tell you. You were his everything," she snapped, then quickly softened her voice again. I'm pregnant. I need stability." I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "You already used that lie." Her eyes narrowed. "It wasn't a lie." I raised an eyebrow. "Then why did the clinic say there was no record of your appointment?" She didn't answer. Just stared at me, then turned and walked away. The next morning, Ron called with an update. "The court has scheduled a preliminary hearing," he said. "Next Thursday. What can we expect?" I asked. "She'll try to delay, of course. Maybe fake a medical issue. But if the judge sees the evidence and listens to that recording, it's going to be very hard for her to avoid charges." "And Trevor?" I asked. "We found an address in Austin. The financial fraud unit is already coordinating with federal investigators. He's on the radar now." I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in David's old chair, holding the tea mug he used to keep in the cabinet. The one Brianna had tried to throw away 2 weeks ago. The one I pulled out of the trash with shaking hands. I remembered his laugh. His terrible dance moves. The way he used to fix things in the house, even if he didn't really know how. And I knew I owed him one last thing. To finish this all the way through. That afternoon, I printed 3 copies of every piece of evidence. I organized them into clean binders, labeled each section, deed, financials, poison report, audio file, photos, letters. Then I made another stop at the bank to update my safe deposit box. As I left the building, I saw her across the parking lot, sitting in her car watching me. She didn't wave. She didn't get out. She just stared as I walked back to my car. That night, things escalated. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to the sound of the back door creaking. Not loud, just enough. I slipped out of bed and walked to the hallway. I didn't see her, but I heard a whisper. "Hello, Trevor?" "Hello." I stepped forward. She was standing near the laundry room with her phone to her ear, whispering angrily. "Where are you? You said you'd fix this. You said it wouldn't go this far. Don't leave me like this." I backed away before she saw me. My chest was tight, but not from fear, just disbelief. She was unraveling faster now. And Trevor had clearly vanished. The next day, she didn't come out of her room. Not even for water. I knocked once around noon and said, "We got a court date." No answer. At dinner, I made pasta and left a small plate out. She didn't touch it. That night, I found something sitting on the coffee table. A folded envelope with my name written in the corner. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sentence. "If I leave now, will you drop everything?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I grabbed a pen and wrote back, "No, but it's your only chance to leave without handcuffs." I slid it back under her door. I didn't wait for a reply. Because no matter what came next, I wasn't backing down. She had stolen enough. Time, trust, peace, and almost my son's memory. But not this. Not justice. Not this time. The night after I slipped that note under her door, the whole house went still. Not the normal quiet of sleep, but that sharp, heavy silence you feel before a storm breaks. I didn't sleep much. Just sat in my bed, lamp on, listening. Listening for her footsteps, for a door opening, for any sound that might tell me she was doing something reckless again. But there was nothing. Not even the creak of the hallway floorboards. The storm was still coming, I just didn't know when. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of something burning. I rushed to the kitchen and found a pan blackened on the stove, smoking slightly. The burner was on, but no one was in the room. I turned it off and checked the rest of the house. Brianna's door was open. Empty. Bed untouched. Closet half emptied. For a brief second, I thought she was gone. But then I heard it, her voice low and shaky on the front porch. I peeked through the curtain. She was pacing with her phone to her ear, yelling into the receiver. "You said I'd be fine," she hissed. "You promised me. You said we'd flip the house, get out, and move on. Now you're gone, and I'm stuck here with her breathing down my neck." There was a pause, then she whispered, "I gave you everything. All my accounts. All of it." Another pause. "Trevor, don't hang up. Please don't hang." The call ended. She froze. Just stood there, phone in her hand, shoulders hunched, like someone who finally realized they'd been conned. I watched her for a minute, then turned away. That was her price. She'd traded everything for a future with a man who never planned to stay. And now, she had nothing left to hold on to but lies. The court date was 3 days away. Ron called that morning to finalize our side of things. "She's panicking," I told him. "She should be," he replied. Trevor drained 2 of her accounts already. The digital trail links her phone to the forged documents, and the DA's office has reviewed the toxicology report. They're preparing to move this into criminal court right after the hearing. Will she be arrested? If the judge finds cause, yes, Ron said. Right now, she's standing on a cliff. She just doesn't know how far she's about to fall. The next day, she tried one last play. She walked into the kitchen while I was pouring tea and said softly, "I think I might go stay with a friend." I didn't turn. "You mean run?" She paused, then forced a laugh. "You make it sound like I'm a criminal." I looked at her then fully. "You're not being treated like one yet. But you will be." She went quiet. Then, in the most careful voice I'd heard from her yet, she asked, "Why are you doing this, Margaret? Why can't you just let it go? We both lost him. Isn't that enough?" And for a moment, I almost answered her like a mother would to a broken girl. But then I remembered David's voice. His fear. His words. "Please don't let her take everything." So I said, "Because one of us lost a son. The other one made sure he didn't survive." Her expression flickered, barely. But I saw it. She left the room without another word. That night, I gathered everything again. Reviewed it all. The deed. The poison report. The letter. The surveillance screenshots. The will metadata. The fake pregnancy paperwork. I read through David's handwritten letter one more time and tucked it back into the folder. And then I did something I hadn't done since the funeral. I walked into his room, turned off the lights, and sat on the edge of his bed. It still smelled faintly of the cologne he used to wear. Still had that dent in the mattress where he used to sit to put his socks on. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I'm almost there, baby. I didn't forget. I won't let her win." The morning of the hearing, Brianna looked like she hadn't slept. Her makeup couldn't hide the circles under her eyes or the way her hands trembled. She wore a navy blue blazer and tried to act composed, but the silence between us was heavier than ever. At the courthouse, she sat across the waiting area with her attorney, a man who looked like he regretted taking her case. I stayed beside Ron. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. The file in his hands said everything for us. Inside the courtroom, it was simple. No crowd. Just the judge, the lawyers, a clerk, and us. Her lawyer began with the same tired performance: grief, pressure, confusion. He claimed Brianna acted out of emotional stress, that she didn't understand the legal implications, that she never intended harm. Then Ron stood. He walked the judge through the documents, one by one. The forged will, created on her laptop after David's death. The toxicology report, showing poison built up over weeks. The surveillance footage, proving Trevor entered the house without explanation. The fabricated ultrasound with false dates. The fake eviction notice. And finally, the recording of David's voice and the handwritten letter. The judge asked to hear the recording twice. When it ended, the room stayed silent for a long time. Then the judge spoke. This is no longer a matter of simple property dispute. There's clear evidence of fraud, coercion, and likely criminal misconduct. All civil motions in favor of Ms. Lane are denied. Ms. Margaret retains full co-ownership and occupancy rights to the property. This matter will be escalated to the district attorney's office for further action. Brianna didn't speak. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She just stared ahead like she was watching the end of a movie she didn't understand. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she didn't react. Outside the courtroom, I felt the sun on my face for the first time in what felt like months. I breathed in, steady and clean. Ron put a hand on my shoulder and said, "You did it." I nodded. "No, David did. I just followed the trail he left." When we got home, she went straight to her room. No rage. No yelling. No fake tears. Just silence. That night, I heard her on the phone again. This time, her voice wasn't strong. It was cracking. "There's nothing left," she said. "She took it all. I have nowhere to go." A pause. Then, quietly, "What do I do now?" The person on the other end didn't answer. Or maybe they did, and she didn't like what they said, because she threw the phone across the room. I stayed in the hallway until I heard her door close. Then I turned away, went to the kitchen and made tea. Because the storm had passed. And now, all that was left was the quiet. But not the kind filled with fear. This time it was peace. The kind that comes when the truth finally breathes. I woke up the morning after the hearing to the sound of cardboard boxes being dragged across the hallway floor. Not loud, but enough. The kind of sound that said final. When I opened my door, I saw them, 6 or 7 boxes half-sealed, labeled in Brianna's handwriting. Clothes, makeup, important. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. She was leaving. And I didn't feel joy. Not revenge, not victory. Just relief. Like a long exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding since the night David died. I stood in the doorway for a moment and watched her shuffle around the guest room, carefully folding sweaters she'd once bought with David's money, placing them in neat rows as if order could fix everything. She noticed me after a while and didn't say anything at first. Then she turned and said, "You must be proud of yourself." I didn't respond. I just leaned against the doorframe and waited. "You tore everything down," she said, stuffing shoes into a box. "You made sure I lost everything." "No," I said calmly. "You did that all on your own. I just made sure the truth wasn't buried with David." She smirked, but it didn't have the same sharpness anymore. "You think people care about truth? About what's fair? They care about who screams loudest." "Maybe," I said. "But this time, the evidence screamed louder than you did." She didn't like that. She turned back to her packing and zipped a suitcase shut harder than she needed to. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I had nothing else to say. By noon, she was almost done. I heard her on the phone again, voice lower this time. "I'm leaving now." "No, I don't know where yet. I just need a place for a few days until I figure things out." Whoever was on the other end didn't offer much comfort, because her shoulders slumped and she hung up fast. She walked into the kitchen to get water and saw me at the table, reading a book. She hesitated, then said, "You won't forgive me, will you?" I looked up slowly. "You didn't ask for forgiveness. You asked for a shortcut." She stared at me for a long time, then finally said, "You don't understand what it's like to be left with nothing." That made me close the book. "No," I said. "I understand exactly what that feels like. I lost my only child. My son. The person I raised, loved, protected, and believed in. And you tried to erase him, just so you could make room for someone who used you. Don't tell me about losing everything, Brianna. You never had what mattered." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Later that evening, she rolled her last suitcase to the front door. It was raining lightly, the sky dim and low. She paused with her hand on the doorknob, then looked back at me one last time. "I'm sorry," she said, but not in a way that meant anything. It was just words. I nodded once, not out of forgiveness, but finality. You have until midnight. After that, I changed the locks. She didn't argue. She stepped out, pulled the door closed behind her, and was gone. Just like that. I waited a few minutes, listening for the sound of her car starting, driving off. When I heard the engine fade down the street, I stood alone in the hallway. The walls felt taller, the rooms wider. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel like a trap, it felt like mine. Later that night, while I was cleaning the living room, I found something on the coffee table. A small silver flash drive. No label. No note. Just sitting there like bait. My stomach turned. Brianna never left things behind on accident. I stared at it for a long time. I thought about throwing it away, but I'd come too far to leave any stone unturned. So I plugged it into David's old laptop, the one she never touched because she said it smelled like dust and grief. Inside was a single video file named simply openme.mp4. I clicked. The screen lit up with her face. She was sitting in David's chair, in the office where he used to work. Her expression was cold, calm. If you're watching this, she said, then I guess I lost. Or ran. Or maybe both. She leaned in closer, eyes like ice. I did what I had to do. You never understood. He would have never left you on his own. You controlled him. You were always there, watching, judging. I gave him a way out. My hands curled into fists, but I didn't stop the video. She continued, you can have the house. You can have the past. But you'll never forget this. You'll never stop wondering what really happened the night he died. Maybe it was me. Maybe it wasn't. You'll never really know. Then she smiled, sharp, cruel, and the screen went black. I sat there for a while, breathing. Then I deleted the file, dragged it to the trash, and emptied the folder. Because I didn't need her games anymore. I didn't need her poison in the walls of this house. I had the truth. The courts had it. The police had it. And I had David's voice, his letter, his words. She couldn't touch that. The next day, I met with Ron and handed over the flash drive, just in case. He said the investigation was ongoing. More charges were likely. Trevor had been spotted in another state using a fake ID. The FBI was already involved. It was just a matter of time. I came home that evening and sat at the kitchen table. Alone. Peaceful. I boiled water for tea, lit a candle, and turned on David's favorite playlist. For once, the music didn't feel like a ghost. It felt like a memory. A good one. Then I walked to the hallway, where I'd put his photo back up. He was smiling, arms crossed, standing beside me the day we moved into the house. His eyes were bright. He looked happy. I stood in front of the photo, touched the edge of the frame, and whispered, "It's over, baby. She's gone. I did it. And I meant it. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just stood there, letting the quiet wrap around me. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was a promise kept. And for the first time since that terrible night, I could breathe freely. My house. My rules. And no more lies.